252 Holding hands like this, ending. Leaning in his arms, Lin-Li shook her head and only said, "I'm not uncomfortable. Auntie already told me that you didn't eat much for dinner." A few days ago, he had felt nauseated when he saw her, but he couldn't leave the company during this period of time. However, he felt nauseated today. It seemed that he really needed to go to the hospital for a proper examination. He thought about it and said, "No, I'll accompany you to the hospital tomorrow morning." He. Lin-Li, who was in his arms, chuckled, "You're still laughing." After letting go of her, Joo-han pinched her nose as a punishment and asked, "Think about whether you're hungry or not. What do you want to eat? I'll make it for you." Lin-Li looked at him, her big eyes rolling around as she said, "I really want to eat ramen." He just assumed that she was hungry because she hadn't eaten at night. Joo-han didn't think much about it and rubbed her hair affectionately. He stood up and said, "Okay, I'll cook for you. I'd like to add eggs." A certain someone was insatiable. "I know." After taking off his coat and rolling up the sleeves of his shirt, Joo-han walked straight to the kitchen. In the room, Lin-Li watched him go out and close the door. She lifted the quilt and got out of bed. She took the suit jacket he had taken off and hung it in the closet. The smile on her mouth never disappeared. She said to herself, "Silly girl." As she spoke, she lowered her head and slowly placed her hand on her stomach. Outside the room, the housekeeper saw Joo-han walking towards the kitchen with his sleeves rolled up. She thought he was hungry and wanted to find something to eat. She took the initiative to go forward and said, "Do you want to have supper? I'll make it for you." As she said that, she took the apron and was about to put it on. Joo-han stopped her and said, "Auntie, there's no need. You can go and rest. I'll just cook something." "It's okay, I'll be quick. I'll cook you a bowl of noodles." As he spoke, he swiftly took the pot from the gas stove and directly washed it under the tap. "Auntie, there's really no need. Lin-Li wants to eat, so I'll cook for her." He reached out to take the pot from her hands, put in the water, and turned on the fire. Seeing his insistence, the housekeeper didn't say anything more. She just smiled and said, "Then call me if you need anything." She left the kitchen after she finished speaking. When Joo-han brought a simple but delicious bowl of egg noodles into the room, Lin-Li was sitting on the bed thinking about something. There was a beautiful smile on her mouth and she was thinking very seriously. She didn't even notice Joo-han coming in with the noodles. Putting the noodles aside, Joo-han waved his hand in front of her and asked, "What are you thinking about? Why are you so serious?" Lin-Li came back to her senses and shook her head. She looked at him and suddenly asked, "Joo-han, what do you think our children will be like in the future? Is it a boy or a girl?" Joo-han was stunned and didn't react in time. He asked, "You want a child?" Lin-Li asked, "You don't want it?" Joo-han raised his eyebrows and said with a deeper meaning, "Of course I want it. Be good and eat the noodles first. We'll talk about the children after you're done eating." As he spoke, he handed the bowl of noodles to Lin-Li. Lin-Li reached out to take it, but her reaction was half a beat slow before she realized the meaning of his words. She was angry and amused at the same time, and she rolled her eyes at him and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? I'm not talking to you anymore." As he said that, he turned his head. Joo-han also laughed. He stood up and said, "I'll go take a shower first." Lin-Li nodded. She was really hungry, so she took the bowl of noodles and ate slowly. Joo-han added chopped green onions to the noodles. In fact, Lin-Li usually liked to eat chopped green onions, but she couldn't stand the smell today. Her stomach was churning. Lin-Li quickly put the noodles aside, lifted the quilt, and ran to the bathroom. Lin-Li. Upon seeing this, Joo-han couldn't be bothered to look for clothes to take a bath and directly followed her into the bathroom. He saw Lin-Li vomiting into the toilet bowl. As she didn't eat much for the entire night and had vomited several times during dinner, Lin-Li didn't have anything to vomit even if she wanted to. All she could vomit out was water. Lin-Li, Qian. Joo-han gently stroked her back and frowned. "Let's go to the hospital. How could anyone stand vomiting like this?" Lin-Li leaned towards Joo-han weakly and leaned into his arms. She panted slightly and said, "No, I'm fine." "No, I'll take you to the hospital now." As he spoke, Joo-han carried Lin-Li. "Ah!" Lin-Li exclaimed and wrapped her arms around Joo-han's neck. Seeing that he didn't look like he was joking, Lin-Li could only compromise, "I'm fine." "Joo-han, let me down first. I have something to tell you." Juhan put her down and let her sit on the bed. He frowned slightly and asked anxiously, "What did you want to tell me?" Lin Li's mouth was still smiling. She reached out and pulled his big palm, saying, "I might be pregnant." Juhan didn't think too much about it and asked in confusion, "What's there?" Lin Li poked him with her hand and laughed, "You Dumbo." Juhan was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He looked at Lin Li with some uncertainty and asked tentatively, "You mean you're pregnant?" "It's just a suspicion. I'm not sure yet, but it might really be there. My period is more than half a month late." Lin Li looked at him and said, she also thought that her nausea was because she had eaten something bad, but she had not even taken a few bites that night. When the housekeeper brought the steamed fish to her, she smelled the fishy smell and could not stand it. After vomiting, she lay on the bed to rest. It was only then that she remembered that her good friend had not come over half a month later. Then, she thought about the symptoms she had when she was pregnant. She felt that she might really be pregnant, because the symptoms now were the same as before. Juhan stared at her for a while, then suddenly stood up and pulled her hand to walk out. Lin Li was stunned. She didn't know what he wanted to do, so she quickly asked, "Juhan, where are you taking me?" "To the hospital," Juhan said. His voice was a little tense, and the hand that was holding Lin Li's hand was a little too hard. Only then did Lin Li notice that he might have been overly nervous. She stopped and pulled him over, looked into his eyes, and said, "Juhan, it's too late. The doctors have all knocked off." She reached out to smooth the wrinkles on his forehead and said, "Don't be nervous, it'll be fine. We'll go over tomorrow morning." Juhan looked at her and thought for a while. Then, he suddenly pulled her away, turned around, and ran outside. "Juhan!" Lin Li shouted at him, "Where are you going?" Juhan didn't look back and ran out directly. After a while, the sound of a car starting up could be heard in the courtyard. Standing at the door, Lin Li muttered in a low voice, "Don't tell me he's scared silly." Lin Li didn't know where he went in such a hurry, so she could only pour herself a glass of water and wait for him in the room. When Juhan came back, it was already half an hour later. He came in with a plastic bag. "What did you buy?" Lin Li stared at the plastic bag he was carrying in confusion. Juhan didn't say anything. He directly placed the things in the plastic bag on the bed and poured them out. They were all pregnancy test kits and pregnancy tests of various brands. There were at least 10 types. "God, why did you buy so many?" Looking at the various types of pregnancy test kits on the bed, Lin Li really felt that it was ridiculous. Juhan casually grabbed a few pregnancy test strips and handed them to Lin Li. Seeing that he had dropped the pregnancy test strips, he picked up a few from the bed and stuffed them into Lin Li's hands. He said, go test it." He couldn't tell what he was feeling right now. He only knew that his heart was beating very fast, so fast that it was almost about to jump out. Lin Li looked at the standard pregnancy test tools in her hands and then looked at Juhan's serious expression. She knew that if she didn't test these tonight, Juhan would definitely not give up. She had no choice but to compromise and went into the bathroom with the writing. Juhan stood at the door of the bathroom, feeling inexplicably anxious. A few short minutes was more difficult to endure than a few hours. Not knowing how long had passed, the bathroom door finally opened slowly. Lin Li came out from inside, and Juhan almost grabbed her and asked, "How is it? Are you really pregnant?" Lin Li looked at him. 8, she said. 2 of them didn't respond. 6 of them all had 2 red lines. Juhan also stared at her, and his grip on her shoulder tightened. He asked, "So you're really pregnant, right?" Lin Li nodded heavily. "I got it." She couldn't tell what she was feeling at this moment, but looking at Juhan, she felt like crying. She thought that this kind of emotion should be gratitude. There was a new life in her stomach. She didn't protect that fragile life well the last time. This time, she would definitely cherish it. Juhan didn't say anything for a while and just stared at her. Lin Li looked at him and couldn't help but be suspicious. She asked tentatively, You don't want children?" She had never thought about whether Juhan wanted children or not. If he didn't want children, what should she do? Before Lin Li could figure it out, she was suddenly pulled into a strong chest. His arms wrapped around her tightly, and a slightly hoarse voice rang in her ear. "We really have a child." His tone was filled with uncertainty and doubt. Lin Li could feel the warm breath on her neck, and, and what seemed to be a drop of cold liquid with some residual warmth sliding down her neck, wetting her skin. She no longer had any doubts and no longer had any uncertainties. At this moment, she was sure that Juhan was happy and excited like her. She reached out and slowly lifted her arms to hug him. She nodded and said, "It's true. We really have a child. Ha ha ha." Juhan laughed heartily and heroically. He let go of her, then picked her up by the waist again. He spun around happily on the spot and laughed as he said loudly, "We have a child, we have a child, Yingluo." "Ah!" Lin Li screamed and patted his shoulder. "Juhan, you're crazy, quickly put me down." Ying. Father Ju and Mother Ju, who had already fallen asleep, were also woken up by the movements in their rooms. They put on their pajamas and coats and came out of their rooms. When they came to their room door, they heard laughter and shouts from inside, but they didn't know what was going on inside. The two of them looked at each other. Mother Ju knocked on the door and shouted, "Ahan, Ahan, what are you guys doing inside?" "Juhan, open the door," Father Ju also said in a deep voice. Only then did the two people inside realize that their overexcitement had alarmed the other people in the room. Inside the house, Lin Li stuck out her tongue at him playfully and patted his shoulder. "Put me down, quick." When he opened the door again, he saw Father Ju and Mother Ju standing at the door. The little guy behind them even ran out in his pajamas. "What's wrong? What are you two shouting about in your room so late at night?" Mother Ju asked. "Dad, Mom, Lin Li and I have something to tell you." Juhan looked at his parents and his excitement had calmed down a lot. As if she could see that something was wrong with them, the two looked at each other. Mother Ju asked, "What's the matter?" "Lin Li is pregnant," Juhan said, his hand holding Lin Li's hand tightly. His usually cold face was now smiling. Perhaps this was too sudden, but when Mother Ju and Father Ju first heard Juhan's words, they still couldn't react. They just looked at Lin Li and Juhan in a daze. However, the little guy behind them was the first to react. He squeezed over from behind and asked with his big black eyes, "Auntie, do you have a little brother?" Lin Li squatted down and touched the little guy's head, saying, "Yeah, Xiaobin will be big brother from now on. Are you happy?" The little guy looked at her without saying a word. At this time, Father Ju and Mother Ju also regained their senses. Mother Ju grabbed Lin Li's hand excitedly and asked, "Really? Is it true, Lin Li?" It was too sudden. He wanted to rush them before. Xiaobin was too lonely. He didn't expect to be pregnant now. Lin Li nodded. "I just tested it with a test paper. It's positive. But I have to go to the hospital tomorrow to confirm it." Of course. I'll get Juhan to accompany you to the hospital tomorrow morning for a proper examination." As Mother Ju spoke, she turned her head to look at Juhan. "Juhan, don't go to the company tomorrow. Accompany Lin Li to the hospital for a proper examination." Juhan nodded. Yeah, if he could, he wanted to take Lin Li to check it out right now. That's great. Don't you agree, old Ju?" Mother Ju turned to look at Father Ju. "This is really a great thing. We don't have to worry about our Xiaobin being alone in the future." He squatted down and looked at Xiaobin. "Xiaobin, now that your Aunt Lin Li has a baby, you'll be the older brother. With little brothers and little sisters to play with you. It's just like in kindergarten. Are you happy?" The little guy lowered his head and did not say anything. The originally happy atmosphere suddenly became a little awkward. Mother Ju looked at Father Ju, then looked at Lin Li and Juhan. Only then did Lin Li remember the worry and fear the little guy had shown when they were talking about children. He said that he was afraid that everyone would not like him after having a little brother and would not want him anymore. "Auntie." The little guy slowly raised his head and looked at Lin Li. "Yes, Auntie is here." Lin Li squatted down and looked into his eyes. "What's wrong, Xiaobin? With a little brother, will Auntie not want Xiaobin?" she asked, her dark eyes still glistening with tears. She looked very heartbroken. "Silly girl." Lin Li smiled and touched his head. She pulled him into her arms and said, "Why would Auntie not want Xiaobin? Xiaobin is so obedient. Auntie can't wait to dote on Xiaobin. But Auntie already has a little brother. Once she had a little brother, she would not care about him anymore. Just like her mother, once she had a new boyfriend, she would not want him and her father anymore. Xiaobin, does Auntie not treat you well? Doesn't she dote on you?" I didn't. Seeing that she had misunderstood him, The little guy hurriedly pushed her out of her arms and explained, Auntie is very good to Xiaobin, the best person in the world. Lin Li chuckled and looked at him. So, what are you worried about, Xiaobin? Even if you have a little brother, Auntie will still be very good to you, just like before. When the little brother grows up, there will be one more person who will be good to you. Isn't that good? The little guy looked into her eyes. Really? Of course it's true, Lin Li said with certainty. If you don't believe me, you can ask Grandpa, Grandma, and Dad. Upon seeing this, Mother Ju quickly continued, it's true, it's true. We all dote on Xiaobin as much as before. Father Ju and Juhan also nodded. Seeing that they all said so, the little guy finally smiled through his tears. He looked at Lin Li and said, Auntie, I'll sleep with you tonight, okay? All right. Lin Li agreed immediately. Hearing this, Juhan, who was standing by the side, couldn't help but frown. His originally faint smile became much colder. Lin Li didn't pay attention. She only held the little guy's hand and said to Mother Ju, Mom, Xiaobin will sleep with us tonight. Mother Ju nodded with a smile. Since her grandson had taken the initiative to mention it, she had no other opinions. Good night, Grandpa. Good night, Grandma. The little guy said politely and pulled Lin Li to the bed. Mother Ju smiled and told Juhan to take good care of Lin Li. Then, she turned around and went back to her room with Father Ju. When Juhan closed the door and turned around, his bed had been taken over by another man. His wife was also being held by that man. Even his child's first intimate contact had been taken away by that man. On the bed, Xiaobin's ear was pressed against Lin Li's stomach, as if he wanted to hear what his little brother was doing in her stomach. He asked, Auntie, why is there no sound? Isn't little brother inside? As she spoke, she pressed her little head against Lin Li's stomach again. Lin Li laughed and touched his head, saying, maybe little brother is asleep. The smile on his face was filled with satisfaction and happiness. The little guy raised his head and looked at the window. He nodded and said, yes, little brother needs to sleep at night. Yes, it's already so late. Little brother should have fallen asleep long ago. Lin Li looked at him and asked with a smile, then, Xiaobin, do you want to sleep? You're the older brother, so you have to be a role model for your younger brother. Upon hearing Lin Li's words, the little guy quickly nodded and said, then I'm going to sleep too. I'm the older brother, so I have to be a role model for my younger brother. As she spoke, she immediately lay down and obediently closed her eyes. Lin Li looked at his cute appearance and couldn't help but make him laugh. She liked this Xiaobin. He had the innocence, curiosity, and happiness of a child his age. She liked this side of him. With his eyes closed, the little guy did not forget to say, Auntie, I'm going to sleep. Help me say good night to little brother. Okay, Auntie will tell little brother. Lin Li agreed and patted his head to cover him with the blanket. She turned around and saw Juhan still standing at the door, frowning as he stared at the little one on the bed. Looking at his awkward expression, Lin Li couldn't help but laugh and said, why are you still standing there? Didn't you want to take a shower? Juhan stared at the little person who had taken everything from him for a while. In the end, he felt bored and went to take his clothes and enter the bathroom. When Juhan came out of the bathroom after taking a shower, Lin Li patted the little guy lightly and was about to fall asleep. Holding the towel and grabbing his hair, Juhan walked to the other side of the bed and then turned back to stand beside Lin Li. Lin Li was also feeling sleepy. She yawned delicately and asked, what's wrong? Juhan looked at the little guy who was lying in the middle and asked, does he have to lie in the middle? He just wanted to hug his wife and have a good night's sleep after coming back from work. But what was going on now? Furthermore, Lin Li was pregnant today. He wanted to hug her to sleep even more. Okay, just sleep like this. When you get on the bed, move a little. Don't wake up Xiaobin. She yawned again as she spoke. She was really tired after the night. I'll sleep later. Seeing that her eyelids were so heavy that she could not lift them, Juhan quickly said, lie down first. What's wrong? Lin Li looked at him in confusion, not knowing what he wanted to do, but she still listened to him and lay flat. Seeing that she was lying flat, Juhan lifted the blanket and went down. He put half of his face and ears on Lin Li's stomach and said softly, let me hear the child. Lin Li laughed and grabbed his head, saying, why are you acting like a child? You're still so young. How can you hear me? As she spoke, her slender fingers ran through his hair. His hair was not completely dry yet, and it was slightly moist. Even though he couldn't hear anything, Joo-han still stubbornly pressed his face against her stomach and listened for a while. He even raised his head and kissed Lin Lee's stomach through her clothes. As he stood up, Lin Lee asked with a smile, "Did you hear that?" "Of course I do." Joo-han said it in all seriousness, then he pulled the blanket over her. "May I ask what he said to you?" Lin Lee asked him with her head tilted. Joo-han half squatted and lowered his head to kiss her on the lips. He said that this is a secret between him and Dad, and he won't tell anyone." "Nonsense." Lin Lee smiled, and the smile on her face was as happy as a flower blooming. Joo-han also laughed. Then, he looked at the little guy who appeared out of thin air on the bed. He pondered for a while and said, "I have to find a time to have a good talk with this kid." "Talk about what?" Lin Lee asked curiously. He's already such a big child, yet he still wants to sleep with someone else. "What kind of behavior is this?" Joo-han said with a serious face as if it was a serious matter. Lin Lee patted him. "When did you become so boring?" She said, "You're getting jealous of a child." She hoped that Xiaobin would grow up to be like this in the future. Only then would he be like a normal child and not like before, where he didn't speak and just played with himself. "He's violating my rights." Joo-han looked serious. Lin Lee didn't argue with him. She reached out and pushed him, saying, "All right, go to sleep." Joo-han didn't leave and just stared at her. "What are you doing?" Looking into her eyes, Joo-han said, "Kiss me." Lin Lee rolled her eyes at him. "The kids are here." If Xiaobin saw her kissing Joo-han, she would be so embarrassed. She didn't want to. "If you don't want to kiss me, then I'll kiss you." As he spoke, Joo-han leaned over and was about to kiss Lin Lee's mouth. Lin Lee quickly pushed him away and compromised, "I'll just kiss you." If he were to kiss her, who knew what would happen? Upon hearing that, Joo-han half squatted by the bed again, looked at Lin Lee, and said, "Come on." Lin Lee didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She could only lean forward and quickly peck him on the lips. Then, she immediately retreated. All right, go to sleep." Joo-han laughed and shook his head. He didn't make things difficult for her anymore. He got up and went around the other side of the bed. His actions were just as Lin Lee said, very careful. The next morning, Joo-han was awoken by someone's kick. He frowned and opened his eyes, only to see the face in front of him that was in a daze from sleep. It had the innocence and cuteness unique to a child. Being sandwiched between two adults, in addition to the fact that Joo-han's previous single bed was not big to begin with, it was difficult for him to turn over when he was sandwiched in the middle. In a daze, he felt as if he had kicked something, and then he slowly opened his eyes. "Daddy Yingluo," he subconsciously called out softly. The little guy's head was still a little dazed. Joo-han looked at him, feeling angry and amused at the same time. However, this was the first time he looked at the little guy so closely. Only then did he realize that there was a birthmark on the top of the little guy's forehead. It wasn't easy to notice it when it was usually covered by his hair, but now that he was asleep, it was exposed when his hair was raised. The dazed little guy seemed to have regained his senses. He opened his eyes wide and looked at Joo-han, who was lying next to him. He was a little surprised and even a little frightened. The expression on his little face became rich. Dad Yingluo." "Yes," Joo-han replied softly. The little guy didn't seem to be used to lying with Joo-han like this, so he twisted his body and wanted to get up. "Don't move." Under the blanket, Joo-han held his hand and said in a low voice, "Don't wake your auntie up." The little guy didn't dare to move or even breathe. He only nodded to show that he understood. Knowing that he was uncomfortable, Joo-han gently pulled the blanket away and got off the bed. When he took his clothes, he couldn't help but turn to look at him and said softly, "If you're tired, sleep for a while more." The little guy nodded and did not say anything. By the time Lin Lee woke up again, the two men beside her had already left. They went out after washing up. When she went to the living room, everyone had already woken up. Mother Ju and the housekeeper were bringing out the breakfast that they had prepared from the kitchen. Lin Lee wanted to go forward to help, but was stopped by Mother Ju. She said that she was pregnant now and couldn't move around, or it would upset the fetus. Lin Lee didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She helped to take out the bowls and chopsticks. What could it do to the fetus? Joo-han went up to pull her over and said in her ear, "Mom was nervous." She was so happy that she didn't sleep well the whole night. She got up early in the morning to make breakfast. After breakfast, Mother Ju urged Juhan to take Lin Li to the hospital for a checkup. She said that she had already called her friend who used to work in the hospital. Even if she wasn't in the hospital now, there were still acquaintances around. She said that everything had been arranged and that she would give Lin Li a checkup when she arrived. She was half pushed out of the door by Mother Ju. Not long after she got into the car, Anran's phone call came in. As soon as the phone was picked up, before Lin Li could say anything, Anran anxiously asked, "Hey, Lin Li, you're pregnant. How did you know?" Lin Li was a little surprised. She had only suspected and guessed about her pregnancy yesterday until it was confirmed. She didn't remember calling Anran to tell her about this. "I'm at the quad. This morning, your mother-in-law called my mother-in-law and asked her if she knew anyone in the gynecology department. My mother-in-law asked and found out that you were pregnant. She knew that we were good friends and told me about it when we were having dinner." Anran explained, "Are you really pregnant? Where are you now? I'll go and see you." On the other end of the phone, Anran was very excited. "I'm not sure yet. He's on the way to the hospital now, but the test last night was positive. I'll go find you. I'll go find you. What are you looking for? You're a pregnant woman, so you should just stay at home and run around. Do you want your leader to worry to death?" Lin Li said jokingly. "Then call me after you're done." "I know. You're the first one I'll call." Lin Li nodded in agreement. After hanging up the phone, Lin Li turned her head to look at Juhan. She suddenly had a very unreal feeling. Seeing that she had suddenly quieted down, Juhan asked, "What's wrong?" Lin Li looked at him and said, "I suddenly feel so unreal. It feels like I'm dreaming. Everything happened too quickly, too blissfully, so quickly that it made her feel a little uneasy." "Silly girl." Juhan looked at the road ahead seriously and said, "See if I'm real or not. If I'm not, pinch me." Lin Li chuckled and leaned back, looking at him with her head tilted. She was still a little uneasy and said, "Juhan, do you think I'm really pregnant? Do you think those pregnancy test papers and sticks are bad?" She was worried for no reason, but what if the results showed that she wasn't pregnant? Wasn't there a saying that the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment? Juhan looked at her and saw her nervousness and uneasiness. He freed his hand to hold her hand and said, "I won't." "Then what if you really aren't pregnant?" Lin Li was still uneasy, especially the closer she got to the hospital, the stronger this feeling became. "Then we'll go back and work harder." As Juhan spoke, he grabbed her hand and kissed it. Ling Tong understood the meaning behind his words, and he blushed as he rolled his eyes at him. "Big pervert, you're not serious." However, after hearing what he said, her heart unconsciously relaxed a little. Suyu's mother had indeed arranged for a doctor to take them to the hospital for a series of examinations. When the report came out, it was already an hour later. Lin Li was indeed pregnant for 8 weeks, and her expected date of delivery was September this year. When she heard the doctor say that she was indeed pregnant, Lin Li's nervous mood all morning was finally put down. She turned around and hugged Juhan, saying a little excitedly, it's true, we really have a child. He's in our stomachs." Juhan hugged her back tightly and nodded. "Yeah, it's true." The doctor who carried out Lin Li's checkup was also happy for them. He reminded them of the things they had to pay attention to and also reminded them that they had to come to the hospital for a checkup after 13 weeks. When she came out of the hospital, Lin Li was much more relaxed. She didn't forget what she had promised Anran in the car. As soon as she left the office, she immediately called Anran and told her that she was really pregnant. Anran on the other side of the phone seemed to be even more excited than she was, and she even said that she wanted to arrange an engagement between the children of the two families. After hanging up the phone, she called Mother Ju, who knew that Mother Ju had already known about it. She said that she would call her as soon as the doctor's report came out. Now, she was preparing lunch at home and said that she wanted to celebrate at noon. Finally, she returned to the car. Lin Li thought for a while and called her father and Mother Lin in her hometown. It was Father Lin who picked up the call. When he heard that it was her, he quickly asked if it was cold in Jiangcheng and if he had worn more clothes. The kind of warmth in her heart was self-evident. Holding the phone, Lin Li honestly answered all the questions one by one. Finally, Father Lin said everything he wanted to say, then he asked, "By the way, Did something happen? Dad, come to Jiang City with Mom for the new year today. He had come over to celebrate the new year with her. The two families were very lively, unlike in the past when the three of them were always alone without any New Year's atmosphere. No need, no need. Your mother and I are doing well here. This year, you and Juhan's family can have a good time. Come back after the new year to visit your mother and me. Dad, come over when the time comes. It's good for Mom to make good food for me, Lin Li said coyly. Mother Lin took over the phone and laughed. You little girl, you're already married and you're still pestering your mother to cook for you. Lin Li stuck out her tongue playfully as she held the phone and said, Mom, I have something to tell you. What is it? I'll have a chat with Juhan. As she spoke, she turned to look at Juhan and reached out to hold his hand. I have a child with Juhan. The person on the other end of the phone was stunned for a moment, then she heard Mother Ju raise her voice and ask, What did you say? What did you do? What did you do with Juhan? Lin Li's ears hurt from Mother Lin's voice, and she couldn't help but move further away. Juhan took the phone and said, Mom, I'm Juhan. Juhan, Mother Lin asked anxiously. Juhan, what did Xiao Li say just now? She said that you guys have a child. Yes, we have a child. He just came out of the hospital. The doctor said it's been 8 weeks and the expected date of delivery is September this year. Juhan said, That's great, that's really great. Then, Mother Lin quickly said to Father Lin, Old Lin, Juhan said that Xiao Li is pregnant. We are going to be grandparents. Juhan could hear the excited and happy voices of the two elders. He turned his head to look at Lin Li and held her hand tightly. Mom, come to Jiangcheng for the new year this year. Lin Li misses you guys a lot. We don't have many relatives, and I'm the only child in our family. It's cold and quiet every year. Lin Li and I are married this year. The two families can celebrate the new year together. It'll be lively when the time comes. On the other end of the phone, Mother Lin agreed. Okay, now that Lin Li is pregnant, I have to go and take a look. Otherwise, with her muddled personality, she won't be able to take care of herself, let alone the child. Hearing that her mother had agreed to come over, Lin Li quickly reached out and snatched the phone from Juhan's hand. Then, she pulled her mother and talked for a while before hanging up the phone. After putting her phone back into her bag, Lin Li looked up at Juhan and stared into his eyes. She asked, Juhan, all of this is real, right? Juhan didn't say anything. He reached out and pulled her over, then lowered his head and covered her mouth with his lips. After a while, when Lin Li was breathless from his kiss, Juhan finally let go of her. He pressed his head against her forehead and asked, Is it real? Lin Li panted, her chest heaving up and down. She couldn't speak for a moment and could only nod. Juhan chuckled and kissed her face carefully before letting her go and starting the car. Ever since Lin Li got pregnant, Juhan stopped letting her go to the company as he was worried that no one would take care of her. Under Mother Ju's insistence, Lin Li brought her back to the mechanical courtyard. Of course, Xiao Bin and Juhan were forced to move back as well. For this reason, Mother Ju specially renovated a few rooms and connected Juhan's original room with the room next to his. Then, she bought a new big bed so that Lin Li could live more comfortably. In the beginning, Lin Li vomited a lot during her pregnancy, and she was already very thin. When she ate less and vomited more, she looked even skinnier. Worried that Lin Li's body wouldn't be able to take it, Mother Ju specially consulted Amran's mother-in-law and made Lin Li eat in different ways every day. As a result, Lin Li's vomiting gradually passed, and she still fed Lin Li 4 to 5 meals a day. However, the effect was really obvious. After eating like this, Lin Li's entire body was much more plump than before. Of course, according to the standard weight, she was still far from it. Juhan was busy playing as usual, but no matter how late he was, Lin Li was still here, so he had to come over every day to take a look. Of course, Lin Li and Juhan had both returned to the courtyard, and Ju Jiabin naturally followed them back to the courtyard. When Mother Ju changed the room, she had already been careful to clear out the child's small room. However, the most troublesome thing was the problem of the little guy going to school. It was not convenient for Lin Li to send the child to school now, and the courtyard was quite far from the city. The kindergarten school bus usually didn't drive here. After a few people discussed it, they finally decided to let Juhan send the child to school before going to work every morning. At night, after school, Lin Li and Mother Ju would go to pick up the child together. Although it was a little troublesome to pick him up like this, there was one good thing about it. The little guy's relationship with Ju-han was slowly getting better. Not to mention that other children would act coquettishly like their fathers. Ju-han had been sending him to school every morning for nearly a month. At the very least, the little guy would not be as afraid when he saw Ju-han as before. He would also speak a little louder. Father Lin and Mother Lin came to Jiangcheng half a month before the new year. Coincidentally, the little guy's holiday started on that day. To celebrate, Mother Ju bought a lot of ingredients. Mother Lin couldn't stay idle either. The two of them and the auntie busied themselves in the kitchen for a long time and made a large table of food. There were still empty rooms in the house, so Father Lin and Mother Lin didn't look for another place to stay. They also lived in the courtyard directly. The two mothers surrounded Lin Li and busied themselves. Every day, they changed ways to make nutritious food, and Lin Li only felt that she had gained a lot of weight. One time, she called Anran and complained that it wasn't that she couldn't get fat from eating. She could feel that she had gained a bit of weight with every bite, which scared her so much that she almost didn't dare to eat anymore. However, her words were all choked back by Anran, because Anran was pregnant with twins, and she was almost 8 months pregnant now. She looked exactly like that fat penguin. This year, the two families had a particularly happy New Year together. Mother Lin and Father Lin went back after celebrating the Lantern Festival in Jiangcheng. They said that they would come back a month before Lin Li's next birth. Now, they were going to go back and knit some beautiful clothes and hats for her future nephew so that he could wear them when his baby came out. In April, the two babies in Anran's stomach were born, but they were far from what Su Yicheng had expected. The ones who came out weren't his two little lovers from his previous life, but Anran's two little enemies. He heard Anran say that because both of them were sons, a certain leader Su was depressed for several days because of this. He couldn't figure out why the two little lovers didn't even have a daughter. She and Juhan had gone to see the children before. They looked like children, and their small faces were wrinkled and had not yet grown up. However, children were like this, especially newborn children. They really looked different every day. After seeing them that day, a few days later, Anran took a photo with her phone and sent it over. The two little guys were completely different from what she had seen before. They were white and tender, and their eyes were wide open as they smiled. They looked especially cute. In Juhan's office, Lin Li showed Juhan the photos she had just received and asked, "Do you think our baby will be as cute as them in the future?" Juhan put down the document in his hand and took the phone to look at it. After a long time, he shook his head and said, "I won't." "Why? Do you think our baby isn't cute?" Lin Li glared at him. As she spoke, she raised her hand and pretended to pinch him. Juhan pulled her over and let her sit on his lap. Her 4-month-old stomach already had an obvious bulge. He placed his hand on her stomach and caressed it back and forth. Juhan kissed her face and said, "Our baby will only be cuter than them." Lin Li looked at him and reached out to pinch his nose. She smiled and said, "You're so sneaky, but I agree. Our baby will be the cutest." Just as Juhan and Lin Li were having fun in the office, the door of the office was suddenly pushed open. Assistant Zhu barged in with a document in his hand. Just as he was about to look up and say something, he looked up and saw Lin Li sitting on Juhan's lap behind the desk and leaning into Juhan's arms. Juhan was staring at him with a serious expression. She cursed herself for not knocking on the door before pushing it in. "I suddenly remembered that I have an important call to make." "Yes, a very important call." She smiled awkwardly as she prepared to leave the room. "Assistant Zhu, I remember that the Yuying Garden project still needs an on-site supervisor," Juhan said in a neutral tone. Special Assistant Zhu groaned in his heart. He turned around like a deflated ball. "Boss, you're not playing with me, are you? Do you think I'm joking?" Juhan looked at him with a faint smile. Special Assistant Zhu made his final struggle. "Secretary Lin, help me out. I didn't know you were inside. If I had known, I wouldn't have dared to disturb you." Supervising was physical work. Lin Li looked at him and thought for a while. She said apologetically, "Special Assistant Zhu, why don't you go and supervise the work, in case you go out to the office and spout nonsense again?" Special Assistant Zhu's lips twitched, but he could not say anything else. The two people in the room couldn't help but laugh as they watched him leave with his head lowered. After laughing, Joo-han raised his hand and looked at his watch. He tidied up the documents and materials on the table, then took Lin Lee's hand and went down. Today was the day of Lin Lee's prenatal examination. Joo-han didn't encounter the first prenatal examination because he was on a business trip. This time, Joo-han insisted on accompanying Lin Lee personally. In the office, the doctor looked at the information from the prenatal examination and nodded. Then, he signed his name on it and said, "Don't worry, everything is normal. Just keep it up." "Is there anything else I need to pay attention to?" Joo-han asked. "During pregnancy, you can take in some calcium. It's good for the development of the child's bones. As for the rest, you just have to maintain your original appearance." As he spoke, he handed the signed documents back to Lin Lee. The two of them thanked the doctor and left the office. Joo-han held her hand and asked, "Where do you want to go?" "I won't be going back to the company in the afternoon. If there's anywhere you want to go, I'll take you." "Really? I'll have to think about it." Lin Lee rolled her eyes and thought seriously. "All right, let me know when you've thought about it." Joo-han held her hand and walked towards the elevator. When the two of them took the elevator to the lobby on the first floor, they coincidentally met Chengsheng, who had returned to the hospital for a follow-up. He looked much better than when he was in the hospital. With his amputated right leg and a prosthetic, he looked no different from an ordinary person. After a moment of shock, Lin Lee took the initiative to speak and said with a smile, "Long time no see, what a coincidence." Chengsheng also laughed and nodded in a daze. "Yeah, long time no see. Lin Lee, I'll wait for you over there." Joo-han walked away to give them some time and space to be alone. Chengsheng stared at her stomach and was dazed for a moment. He muttered, "How many months has it been?" Lin Lee reached out and touched her stomach, then said with a faint smile, "It's been more than 4 months." Chengsheng nodded and remained silent for a while. He turned around and looked at Joo-han, who was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window at the door. He asked Lin Lee, "Did he treat you well?" "Yes." Lin Lee nodded, and the smile on her face was satisfied. "He's very good to me." "That's good," she murmured softly and looked up at Lin Lee again. She only said indifferently, "Go, don't let him wait for you." Lin Lee nodded and walked past him. Then, she suddenly stopped and turned to look at him. "Chengsheng, you will find your own happiness." Chengsheng smiled and accepted her well wishes. "Thank you." Lin Lee didn't say anything more and turned her head to Joo-han. Chengsheng watched them leave, and only retracted his gaze after a long time. When he turned around and was about to continue arguing, a girl appeared beside him and asked, "Is that girl the one you really like?" He looked at her and said, "She is the person I love the most in my life. I will not love anyone else other than her." After saying that, he walked straight to the elevator. After all, they were artificial limbs, so they were not very flexible when walking. Their every step was obvious. The girl said to Chengsheng's back, "I won't give up. I'll make you fall in love with me in her place." Cheng Xiang paused. 11 years ago, there was a girl who said the same thing to him. After thinking for a long time, Lin Lee still couldn't think of any special place to go. In the end, she decided to drag Joo-han to go shopping together. Actually, strictly speaking, the two of them had been married for so long, but Joo-han didn't seem to have accompanied her to go shopping. Joo-han suddenly stopped in front of a wedding dress shop. "What's wrong?" Lin Lee asked, puzzled. Joo-han pulled her over and hugged her from behind. He whispered in her ear, "Lin Lee, let's make up the wedding." "Oh?" Lin Lee was stunned and asked, "You suddenly thought of this?" "I always felt that there was something missing between us. After thinking about it, I finally realized that we were missing a wedding." Lin Lee smiled and shook her head. "No, the thing we're missing isn't a wedding." As he spoke, he pulled the hand that was wrapped around him and interlocked his fingers with hers. "It's not a wedding?" Joo-han looked at him in confusion. Lin Lee raised their hands and shook them, saying, "It's a ring. Tell me, when do you plan to pay me back for the ring you owe me?" Only then did Joo-han come to a realization. He pulled her hand to his mouth and stole a kiss, saying, "Let's go. Before I accompany you to the mall, let's go and get your ring fixed." Lin Lee chuckled and allowed him to pull her towards the jewelry store in front. Actually, it didn't matter what she owed. It didn't matter whether she made up for the wedding or not. As long as the two of them could continue holding hands like this would be the best ending. Because he had already made up for the missing piece of her heart, this was the best. 253 Childhood Sweetheart. I've known Yi Zaiwen since I was born. I heard from my mother that the first person who took me from a nurse wasn't my father nor my grandfather. It was Yi Zaiwen. At that time, he was only 7 years old. Of course, I had no memory of what Mom said. After all, I was too young. Other than crying, I had no memory. However, I still remember that I didn't like him as much as I do now. I even hated him because he always liked to bully me and pull my pigtails to make me cry. Uncle Yi was her father's comrade and lived in the same courtyard. Yi Zaiwen had a good relationship with her brother since they were young. She had heard from Mother Yi that the two of them had even worn the same pair of pants. I'm the only girl in both families, so the adults of both families naturally pamper me. Of course, there are exceptions, and that exception is Yi Zaiwen. He likes to bully me since I was young. I can't remember things that happened when I was too young, but what I remember deeply is that I was pushed down the field by him when I was 5 years old. I remember that on my birthday, Mom bought me a very beautiful dress with bubble sleeves. At that time, I was still dreaming of being a princess, so I was very happy when I got that dress. I ran and jumped in the yard for a long time and even showed it off in front of Mom and Dad Yi. Everyone praised me for my beauty. Yi Zaiwen, who came out of the house, said that I looked like the bad sister of the princess in the cartoon. It was so ugly. After hearing that, I got angry. I pouted and glared at him for a long time. You know, I want to be a princess, not a bad sister of a princess. Because the bad sister of a princess in the cartoon is so ugly, her face is crooked. I still remember when I glared at him until my eyes hurt. It was so sore that my eyes were tearing up. In the end, I could only run away unhappily in a fit of anger. I didn't go home. Instead, I ran to the field and sulked. I felt that the tutu dress I was wearing was no longer beautiful, so I grabbed the skirt in a fit of anger. I don't know if it's because Mother Yi saw that I'm angry, so she got him to come and coax me. Just as I sat by the field and muttered to him, he came over and first apologized to me. Then, he said that he had already prepared a gift for me for my birthday. The moment I heard that he had a gift for me, my unhappiness was reduced by half. It's our gift, I asked him. Although he was still pouting and his tone wasn't very good, I was still full of anticipation for the gift in his hand. After all, it was always good to have someone give me something. He grinned and even deliberately told me to go back with him and give it to me. I didn't agree. I thought that he really hid some good treasure and wanted the gift in his hand. Without saying a word, I stepped forward and pulled his hand away. Then, when I saw clearly that he was holding an earthworm in his hand, I was so scared that I directly screamed and subconsciously stepped back. Then, I directly sat on the field. My whole body was covered in mud and water. I cried out in an instant. Although he didn't mind the dirt and carried me home after that and was taught a lesson by Father Yi and Mother Yi, I still held a grudge against him for 2 whole years. And then what made me change my feelings for him? I have to go back to the time when I was 8 years old. One day, I went home by myself after school. At the school gate, I met the boy that I hated the most in my class, Zhang Xiaoqian. The reason I hated him was because he was just like Yi Zaiwen. He liked to pull my braids just because he was behind me. Sometimes, he would even deliberately poke me. Thus, I classified him as the second most hated boy. Of course, Yi Zaiwen was still the one I hated the most. Zhang Xiaoqian said that he wanted to take me to the park near the school. He said that there was a magic show there today and it was very fun. Many people went to see it. After saying that, he didn't wait for me to agree and pulled me to the park. In fact, I also heard from others at noon. I also wanted to go very much, but because I hated Zhang Xiaoqian, I didn't want to go after he said that. I really didn't want to go, especially when he forcefully pulled my hand, which hurt my hand. I shook his hand off and said I wanted to go home. I had no interest in magic at all. After hearing what I said, Zhang Xiaoqian not only didn't leave, but grabbed my hand even harder and insisted on pulling me to watch the performance. My hand was in so much pain that I cried. However, she did not expect to meet Yi Zaiwen at the entrance of the park, who had also come to watch the performance. At this time, Yi Zaiwen was already in grade 9. He was wearing a white shirt and carrying a school bag on one shoulder. His hair was also deliberately longer than others, and he looked like a rebellious little gangster. Seeing that I was shouting and shouting, he looked at Zhang Xiaoqian who was pulling me. He didn't ask what was going on. He just looked at Zhang Xiaoqian coldly and asked him to let me go. After all, Zhang Xiaoqian was still a child. When he saw someone so much older than him and with a fierce look on his face, he was already half dead from fear. He shook off my hand and ran away, not even watching the performance. I rubbed my wrist that was red from Zhang Xiaoqian's grip. I did not even look at him as I turned around and prepared to go home. However, he grabbed my bag and told me to go in with him to watch the magic show and then go home with him. At that time, I didn't like him at all, so I rejected his request without thinking. I even made a face at him and ran away. After running for a while, I turned back and didn't expect him to follow me instead of watching the performance. I stopped and glared at him angrily. I asked him why he was following me. He rolled his eyes at me in a bad mood, saying that he didn't want any little wimp to bully me later. In a fit of pique, I said that it had nothing to do with him and that I didn't need him to care about my matters. He laughed as he went forward and used his big hand to rub my head. He almost broke my ponytail. He even said that even if we didn't know each other since we were young, I was at least Big Brother's little sister. He and Big Brother were good friends and good brothers, so naturally, he would treat me as a little sister. I glared at him for a while, then turned around and ran, but I didn't notice that there was a busy road behind me. A van rushed directly towards me. I was so scared that I couldn't react at all. I could only watch the car driving closer and closer to me. Just as the van was about to hit me, I was pulled back by a force. Before I could react to what had happened, I had already fallen heavily to the ground. I watched as the van hit Yi Ziwen. I was so worried that I cried. I was afraid that he would die because of this. If he really died, I would be the one who killed him. Although he was annoying, I never wanted him to die. After that, he was sent to the hospital. When father, mother, and Father Yi rushed over, he was still in the operating room. He asked me what was going on. I was so afraid that I couldn't answer a single word. I was afraid of being scolded, and I was afraid of what would happen if Yi Ziwen really died. Fortunately, he was fine, but his feet and hands were fractured to varying degrees. When Mother Yi asked him what was going on, he didn't even think about it and said that he had accidentally crossed the road. Then, Mom asked me if I was frightened. I didn't say anything and just looked at him. Because he saved me and didn't complain to Mom and Dad, my image of him in my heart suddenly grew. I changed from the person I hated the most to the person I liked a little. He stayed in the hospital for half a month because of his broken hands and feet. During this half a month, I came to see him every day after school because I felt guilty for causing him to be like this. I came even more often than my brother and Father Yi. I gave him candy that I bought with my remaining pocket money for him to eat. Although he didn't eat the candy I bought, I still bought it every day. Of course, the candy that he didn't eat would always end up in my stomach. I don't know if it's because he saved me and I feel grateful and guilty towards him, but I started to like following him. I would follow him wherever he went, just like his little follower. The more I interacted with him, the more I discovered his good points. All the things I hated about him were slowly covered up by his good points, and finally disappeared. I realized that he was actually a person with a tough mouth but a soft heart. There were a few times when he was annoyed by me, so he deliberately said harsh words to me to stop following him. However, because of my brother, I was always able to get hold of his information at the first moment. I persisted a few times, but he couldn't do anything to me at all. None of the harsh words I said before came true. In fact, at first, I thought that I only treated him as a brother and had no other thoughts. It was only when I was 16 years old that I saw him intimately pulling a girl along the street. The two of them even kissed each other intimately. That inexplicable sourness and jealousy in my heart made me realize that I didn't just have feelings for him as a brother and sister. I was jealous that the girl could hold his arms so intimately. I hated that they hugged and kissed so sweetly. I hated that he used that kind of gentle look to reach out and push other girls' bangs away. Just because of that scene, I cried all night for no reason. The next day, I ran to ask my brother who the girl was, and only then did I know that the girl was his girlfriend, their junior, the talented girl and the prettiest girl in their school's Chinese department. Big Brother saw through my strange thoughts and asked me if I had fallen for Yi Ziwen. I didn't say anything. I just held my head with my left hand and held my right hand. I thought so. And it wasn't the kind of simple brother-sister love, but the love of a girl to a boy. Big brother didn't say anything. He just touched my head and turned away. I went back to my room and thought about it for a long time. In the end, I decided to confess to Yi Zaiwen. At that time, I thought that at least Yi Zaiwen and I grew up together. No matter what, we would have the advantage of being the pavilion closest to the water, enjoying the moonlight first. So, I deliberately wore a dress and went to the Yi house to wait for him. I waited from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., and then from 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. He finally came in from the courtyard, humming a song. His face was full of pride. I guessed that he must have gone on a date with the department's talented girl. I was secretly ashamed that the girl had a date with a man and went back so late, but she had completely forgotten that she had not come home at this time. He was obviously curious as to why I was still in his courtyard at such a late hour. I told him that I had been waiting for him the whole night. He asked me what was the matter. I paused and looked at him fixedly. I swallowed my saliva and told him the words that I had been thinking about the whole night. I said that I liked him and wanted to be his girlfriend. He was obviously a little surprised that I would confess to him so late at night. He stared at me for a long time, then suddenly laughed out loud. He used his big palm to rub the hair I had specially combed for him and said that I was a child who hadn't even grown all his hair yet and knew what love was. I looked at him in embarrassment and anger, angry that he didn't take my confession seriously. Thus, I didn't care whether it was late or not and whether it would disturb others' rest. I shouted at him that if I didn't know what love was, I wouldn't be sad because he taught a girlfriend, and I wouldn't be angry and sad because he kissed another girl. I loudly expressed my understanding of the definition of like and love, but I had no idea that Father Yi and Mother Yi had come out of the room to see what was going on because of my argument. Perhaps he was really frightened by me at that time. He just looked at me fixedly and didn't react for a long time. I can't care about anything else. I only know that I like him very much and don't want him to be taken away by other girls. So, I made a bold decision. While he was still in a daze, I took a step forward, stood on my tiptoes, and pressed my lips on his. Because it was my first kiss, I had no experience and was so young that I didn't know anything. I only pressed my lips against his for a while before I blushed and retreated. I said that he had taken my first kiss, so he had to be responsible for me. Without waiting for him to answer, I walked around him and wanted to run away. When I reached the entrance of the courtyard, I wanted to turn around and look at him again, but then I noticed Father Yi and Mother Yi standing there. They seemed to have been frightened by me, their mouths half open in shock. I was also quite frightened by them. I had originally wanted to say something to Yi Zaiwen, but I was so frightened that I forgot everything. I turned around and ran home. That night, I slept especially well. My intuition told me that this was good. He would definitely accept my confession and then break up with that girl, because he and I were truly childhood sweethearts. But what I didn't expect was that from the second day after I confessed, he deliberately avoided me and didn't let Big Brother tell me about him. He threatened that if I betrayed him, we wouldn't even be brothers anymore. I was very sad and didn't understand why he was doing this. Was it because I wasn't pretty? During those few days, I would look at myself in the mirror whenever I had time. In the end, I felt that I wasn't good looking anymore after looking at myself for too long. Then, I would smash the mirror in a fit of anger, and the innocent mirror would be broken one after another. In the end, Mom couldn't stand it anymore and came to talk to me. I think she probably heard it from Mother Yi and thought about it for a few days before deciding to have a deep conversation with me. She said that I'm still too young and that my studies are more important right now. I shouldn't spend my time on other things. I knew that she was referring to the fact that I liked Yi Zaiwen. I was still immersed in the feeling that Yi Zaiwen was ignoring me. When I heard her say that, I asked her if Yi Zaiwen rejected me because I was too young. Her mother nodded without thinking and said that it must be the case. She said that boys didn't like girls who were a few years younger than them. They liked girls who were about the same age as them. I naively thought that it was really like this and even complained about my mother's question about why she gave birth to me so late. However, even though Mom told me a lot and told me to focus on my studies, I still thought about Yi Zaiwen and what he would do. When I thought about him being with other girls, my heart felt as uncomfortable as if a monkey was scratching it. I'm still used to going to the Yi family's house every day after school, but I've never met them by chance. I was very sad. I didn't understand why he had to hide from me so tightly. Did he really like the Chinese department's campus belle that much? During that period of time, I was unhappy, very unhappy. I even secretly went to the store to buy beer and drank to drown my sorrows like the heartbroken people on TV. That was the first time I drank. The first sip was so bad that I wanted to throw up, but I held back in the end because I wanted to forget those unhappy things with the wine. However, I slowly got used to the taste of the beer after the first bottle. By the time I finished all 3 bottles of beer, I didn't even know what I had done. The next day, when I woke up, I felt as if my head was about to split open. It was so painful that I wanted to knock on it with my hand. When Mom came in, she gave me a harsh scolding. It turned out that I was drunk and sang and danced the whole night, making the whole family not sleep the whole night. But even though she scolded me, she still made me some hangover tea. After drinking it, my head felt much better. Maybe Big Brother told him that I was drunk, so he took the initiative to wait for me at the school gate after school that day. However, his expression was very serious, and he didn't look like his usual frivolous self. To be honest, I felt a little scared when I saw him. He said he had something to say to me and took me to the park near the school. We sat down on the stone chairs in the park. I asked him where he had been these past few days, but he didn't say anything and just looked ahead. I pouted and felt a little wronged. I asked him why he was avoiding me. Actually, I knew why he was avoiding me, but I just couldn't accept it if I didn't ask. He looked at the sky for a long time, then turned his head to look at me seriously. Then he said that he really only treated me as a sister and asked me not to do those childish things. He wouldn't like me. When I heard him say all this, I felt so sad. My heart really felt like it was going to split open. I bit my lips and didn't let my tears fall. Is it because I'm too young? He nodded and said yes. Just like what Mom said, he said he liked older girls. He also said that he watched me grow up and had always treated me as his little sister. I'm not willing to accept this. I said that only childhood sweethearts would have a good relationship. He shook his head and said that we weren't childhood sweethearts at all because of the age difference between us. I was very angry and shouted at him, age is still age. She asked him, didn't people say that love doesn't care about height or age? Why do you keep using age as an excuse to reject me? He looked at me for a long time, then gave me the simplest example and asked me if I would like a boy who is still in the 3rd grade of elementary school. I didn't realize that he was trying to get information out of me. I didn't even think about it and directly said that I wouldn't. Then he laughed and said that to him, I was the 3rd grade boy I didn't like. I felt as if I had shot myself in the foot. I couldn't say anything to refute him and could only stare at him angrily. The negotiation had gotten the result he wanted. He smiled and reached out to rub my head, telling me not to drink secretly in the future. I was still angry that he was trying to trick me into telling him the truth. I unhappily shook off his hand and shouted at him that I didn't want to be his sister at all. I thought he would follow me home like he did when I was a child, but when I turned around after running for a while, I realized that he was nowhere to be seen. The grievance in my heart surged up and my tears flowed uncontrollably. When I reached home, Mother Yi and Mother Yi were chatting in the courtyard. They stopped talking when they saw me. I didn't have the mood to guess what they were talking about before I came in. I was still sad about what Yi Zaiwen had said to me before. Without saying a word or greeting, he went straight back to his room, closed the door, fell onto the bed, and began to cry uncomfortably. After talking to Mother Yi, she came in and saw me crying on the bed. She helped me pat my back and asked me if I liked Yi Zaiwen that much. I turned around and buried my head in her arms. I cried and told her what Yi Zaiwen had told me. Mom didn't say that she hated him too much. She only said that I'm still young and that I'll meet someone I really like in the future. I pushed her away and turned over in a fit of pique. I hated it when people called me young. I was very sure of my feelings. Feelings had nothing to do with age. In the end, I sighed and left. I didn't know how long I cried that day, but I knew that I cried until I fell asleep. My eyes were red and swollen during breakfast. Grandpa felt bad for me, so he scolded Yi Zaiwen on my behalf. He even scolded my brother. After breakfast, my father called me into the study room and asked me if I was really sure about my feelings for Yu Zaiwen. I nodded my head firmly. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't be so sad. Seeing that I was so certain, father didn't say anything else to dissuade me. He only said that if I was sure of my feelings and thoughts, then I should persevere. I shouldn't retreat and cry because of setbacks. What's more, I shouldn't be dispirited and give up. I was a little surprised that he would say that. I didn't object but agreed. When he saw my dazed look, he came over and touched my head. He said that he didn't object to my feelings for Yu Zaiwen, but I had to ensure that I lived a normal life and studied. Someone in my family became my ally, and I suddenly felt a surge of energy, like someone who was on the verge of death being injected with a shot of adrenaline, and I came back to life. I nodded in agreement and went forward to hug him. I thanked him for supporting my choice. After leaving the study, I made a decision and went directly to the Yi family next door. When I arrived, Father Yi had already left for the army while Mother Yi was cleaning the house. She was surprised to see me. I didn't see Yi Zaiwen in the living room or the kitchen. If I found him, he must still be sleeping. So, I didn't care about Mother Yi calling me from behind and ran straight to Yi Zaiwen's room. As I had guessed, he was still sleeping. I went forward and pulled his blanket away. I didn't expect him to sleep naked, only wearing a pair of boxers, but at that time, I didn't care about the awkwardness and embarrassment. I reached out and tried to wake him up. He frowned and finally opened his eyes. He was a little surprised to see me and asked why I was here. Then, the coldness from his body suddenly made him react. He looked down at himself and then looked up at me. Then, he hurriedly pulled the quilt over himself and asked loudly why I was in his room. I leaned over and stared at his face. I solemnly said that I would continue to like him. Whether he liked me or not, I would continue to do what I wanted to do until he got married. I looked at him and thought that he would say something to me, but he looked at me and gave me an irrelevant answer. He asked me if I was a girl, why I broke into a boy's room, lifted the boy's quilt, and looked at the boy's naked body. I was originally a little embarrassed, but when I saw his red face, I became calm. I deliberately said, "I've even seen your naked butt, what's there to be embarrassed about?" Of course, the naked one was referring to the photo of him when he was just a month old. Yesterday's gloominess was swept away at this moment, and his entire mood was also relaxed. After that, I would still look for him from time to time, and he would always avoid me on purpose. However, he had a good plan, and I had a wall ladder, so we would meet a few times. Not long after that, he broke up with the school belle. I don't know the reason, but he seemed to be in a bad mood for the past few days. However, I was secretly happy for a few days because of this news. I would still confess my love for him and still look for him from time to time. Time passed by unknowingly. Although I was chasing after him every day, I didn't feel tired at all. I hoped that I could grow up faster while chasing after him. At that time, I thought that as long as I grew up quickly, I would grow up to the point where he would ignore the age gap between us and grow up to be a real woman instead of a little sister. I thought that he would definitely accept me then. At that time, I had a very small definition of growing up. I thought that I would be an adult after I turned 18. I would be old enough and not a little sister but a woman who could stand by his side and be his girlfriend. So, on the day I turned 18, I rejected my parents' request to celebrate my birthday with me. Instead, I ran straight to Yu Zaiwen. At that time, he had already graduated from his master's degree and was doing an internship in a construction company. He had also moved out of the compound and rented a house near the company where he was interning. After class, I put on my school uniform and went to his company. I wanted to go up to find him, but I was stopped by his company's security guards. At that time, I didn't have a cell phone, so I couldn't go up after being stopped. I could only stay in the lobby downstairs and stare at the security guard. In the end, I waited for his company to get off work, but he didn't come out. Later, I asked someone and found out that he went to the construction site today and didn't return to the company. I was a little dispirited. I didn't expect that this would be the result of my special visit to him. However, I didn't go back like this. I still didn't give up and went to the place he rented to look for him. However, his door was closed. I rang the doorbell for a long time, but no one came out to open it. I can't just go back like this. I've waited for 2 years. When I grow up, I have to confess to him again and tell him that he can't treat me as a sister anymore. I sat in front of his house and waited. I didn't know how long I waited, but I fell asleep at the door. He came back and saw me at the door, so he woke me up. He looked at me in surprise and asked me why I was here. I rubbed my eyes and wanted to stand up, but I was numb from squatting for too long. I could only raise my head and look at him with grievance. He felt a little helpless, but in the end, he still bent down and reached out to carry me in. I sat in his living room and told him that it was my birthday as I drank the tea he poured for me. He seemed to not know at all. He was stunned for a moment before finally nodding. He reached out to touch my head out of habit and asked me what gift I wanted. I was a little disappointed that he didn't remember my birthday, but I didn't argue with him because I had something important to say to him. I solemnly told him that I had something to say, but he didn't seem to notice my serious expression. He just leaned back on the sofa and looked at me with a smile. He asked me what I wanted to say and even said that if he wanted a gift, he could only make it up tomorrow. I mumbled to myself that I didn't have to wait until tomorrow for the present I wanted the most. He could give it to me today. He didn't respond to my words and only asked me what I wanted to say. I looked at him seriously and told him that I was turning 18 today. He nodded and said that he knew because it was his birthday today. I knew that he was pretending not to understand me, so I said it more directly. I said that I was no longer a little girl, I was a real woman. He could no longer only treat me as a little sister, because I don't want to be his sister, I want to be his girlfriend. He laughed after hearing that, as if he was laughing at my naivety and naivety. He asked me if I knew the difference between a girl and a woman. I was a little angry that he didn't want to accept me and deliberately laughed at me. I showed all my anger on my face and told him that I had taken biology classes before, so of course I knew the difference between girls and women. I also boldly told him that if he was willing, I was willing to let him turn me into a real woman. He seemed to have been frightened by my words. The smile on his face disappeared in an instant, and he angrily scolded me for being ridiculous. I ignored the anger on his face, just like I ignored the disappointment when he didn't remember my birthday. I went up to him and sat down beside him, reached out and hugged him tightly, telling him that I really liked him, that I had really grown up, that I could change from a girl to a woman for him, as long as he was willing to want me. But even after I said that, he still pushed me away. He didn't want me. He still said that he could only treat me as a sister. He said that I just didn't meet a better boy. He said that I only admired and loved him when I was young. He said that I didn't know what love was at all. I cried very sadly and asked him why he was so bad to me. I clearly liked him so much. He said he was doing this for my own good. In the end, he sent me home. At the door, I told him that this was the worst birthday I had ever had. It was 100 times worse than when he used earthworms to scare me when I was 5 years old. He laughed without any sympathy and said that he was very sorry for giving me such terrible memories twice. He also said that since he knew that it was not good for him to be like this, he might as well forget him. I said I'm not that stupid. I won't let him go just like that. I received his gift when I got home the next afternoon. It was the latest mobile phone at that time. His number and a text message were saved in the mobile phone, telling her not to wait foolishly at the company and the door in the future, and to call him directly. The moment I held my phone, I had a faint feeling that he actually liked me too. As long as I persisted and worked hard, I might succeed. I persisted for another 7 years. I still solemnly confessed to him on my birthday every year. Of course, he would always use the same excuse to reject me again and again every year. I still liked to go to him from time to time and call him every day with the phone he gave me. There were a few times when he seemed to be really annoyed by me and told me not to look for him again. He even turned off his phone and didn't let me contact him. I only found out from my brother that he had changed his number and specifically told me not to know. After I found out, I rushed to his house and told him that as long as he got married, I would definitely not bother him like this anymore. I regretted it the moment I said it. I was afraid that if he really found a woman to marry, what would I do? But fortunately, I didn't hear the news of his marriage, nor did I hear that he had another woman by his side, so I was relieved. In the past 7 years, other than Yizaiwen and I, the people around us have also experienced a lot. Back then, brother's girlfriend actually cheated on him, and the other party was Yi Zaiwen and brother's mutual good friend, Juhan. Because of this, brother almost no longer believed in relationships and never had a girlfriend. Mother almost always held family meetings at home because of brother's matters, but the results were obviously much more futile. Just when the family thought that he was really going to be single for the rest of his life, they didn't expect him to get a marriage certificate with someone without a word and follow the trend to become a flash marriage. I opened a restaurant after I graduated from university, called Leisure Restaurant. Thanks to my brother and Yi Zaiwen's relationship, business has been good since the opening and the reputation has slowly built up. In the beginning, I just ran the restaurant as a hobby because I liked to eat all kinds of food. In the end, I really developed feelings for it and took it seriously as a business. However, I didn't expect to meet Yi Zaiwen's ex-girlfriend here. The only girl he publicly acknowledged, the former campus belle. In fact, she had changed quite a lot. Her long hair had become short hair that reached her ears, and her slim and tall figure had become a little fat. The most important thing was that the child in her arms and the bespectacled, refined-looking man sitting opposite her were married and had a child. Even though she had changed so much, I could still recognize her at a glance, because I had been jealous of her for a long time. I went up to greet her, but she seemed to have forgotten about me. I said that I was Yi Zaiwen's friend, and she nodded her head, but her face was calm. When I saw her again, I really wanted to know why she broke up with Yi Zaiwen back then. The reason why I had such a strong desire to find out was that this woman was the only girlfriend that Yi Zaiwen had ever acknowledged and was also his first love. I instinctively felt that this woman definitely had a different meaning to Yi Zaiwen. Perhaps he had not accepted me for so long because of this woman. Because I wanted to know, I took the opportunity when her husband went to the bathroom to sit opposite her. She seemed to be a little surprised and asked me what I wanted. Due to time constraints, her husband could return at any time. I didn't want their relationship to be affected by Yi Zaiwen, so I went straight to the point and asked her why she broke up with Yi Zaiwen. She looked at me for a while and asked me what my relationship with Yi Zaiwen was. I said I was his friend. She seemed to have only just remembered that we had met once in the past. She smiled and asked me if you were Su Yijiao, the little sister next door to Yi Zaiwen. When I heard the word little girl next door, I instinctively felt repulsed. I frowned and said unhappily that I was not a little girl. She was still smiling, and her gentleness matched her temperament very well. She didn't beat around the bush and only said that they had broken up back then because she realized that Yi Zaiwen didn't love her. I couldn't help but widen my eyes. She was the only girlfriend he had ever publicly acknowledged all these years. If he had never loved her, who else had he loved? I still wanted to ask more, but I heard her say that her husband had returned. I understood that she didn't want her husband to misunderstand, and I didn't want to cause a rift between the couple, so I didn't ask any more questions. I stood up and walked away. I went to the counter and told the lobby manager to let their table be free of charge. The words of that talented female campus belle hovered in my head for a few days. I still couldn't figure out who Yi Zaiwen loved if he didn't love her. Could it be that there was someone else hidden in his heart all this time? That's why he couldn't accept my confession and get so close to another woman for so many years. As I thought about it, I started to cry for no reason. This was the first time I felt so tired. I confessed to him again and again, but I was rejected again and again. For so many years, I had been obsessed with one man and never looked at the other guys around me. Then, I suddenly realized that perhaps the person I liked had an unforgettable figure hidden in his heart. No matter how long I persisted and worked hard, it was all in vain. Such a realization hit my heart hard, almost making me collapse. Sister-in-law saw me hiding in the room and crying. She asked me what happened. I felt wronged, so I told sister-in-law all the grievances and persistence I had suffered for so many years. Sister-in-law told me to let go when I'm tired and not to let myself suffer. Let go. I've never thought of letting go. I'm very clear about my feelings for Yi Zaiwen. Rather than saying that I like him, I think it's more like love. However, his sister-in-law said that feelings were a matter between two people. It was not enough to rely on one-sided effort and hard work. Loving a person did not mean giving everything for the other party. She could not just blindly accommodate him and sacrifice herself. She said that if she did not get a response, she should consider whether she should let go and not insist on it. However, I've liked Yi Zaiwen since I was 8 years old, until I was 16 years old, and now I'm 25 years old. It's been 17 years, that kind of love has almost become a part of my life. However, sister-in-law's last words made me change my mind. She said that if one day Yi Zaiwen brought a woman back, what should I do? Sister-in-law really stumped me. I've never thought about what I should do if he really found a woman and got married. I've always thought that the only thing between us was our age difference of 7 years. I've never thought that if the woman between us was really the woman he loved deeply, then I wouldn't have any chance. Then all my years of hard work and persistence are just a joke. My sister-in-law told me to try to let go. At least, I shouldn't let myself run after him. No matter how much I like him, if he really doesn't give us a chance, then why should I force it? Because feelings are never something that can be forced to live on. I thought about sister-in-law's words for 2 days and finally felt that she was right. At least, I shouldn't let myself run behind him again. I've been running behind him for 17 years. No matter how far the distance is, it should be close. In the end, I decided to take a gamble on whether he had me in his heart and whether he really had no feelings for me. If I win, I think I'll win love. If I lose, I think I should see if all these years of persistence were really worth it. No matter what the result is, I think it's good for me. For the sake of this bet, I told myself to stop the habit of calling him. I no longer took the initiative to look for him, nor did I create opportunities to look for him. I tried my best to treat him as an ordinary stranger. I even deliberately ate with other men and went shopping. But at first, she was really not used to it. Every time she picked up the phone, she wanted to call him, but after a few times, she realized that she had to quickly reject the call. For a week, I didn't call him, and he didn't reply to me. I was a little upset. I wondered if he was so happy that he slept very well because he didn't pick up my call. I waited for 10 days, but he still didn't look for me once. I thought that the result of my bet should be out. The result is that he really doesn't have me in his heart, and he doesn't have any feelings for me. This was the result I had expected, but it still made me feel terrible. I gave myself a break and handed over all the work at the restaurant to manager Zhang. Then, I carried my luggage and went out. I went to many places that I didn't have time to go to because I was chasing after Yi Zaiwen. I'll treat this trip as a way to heal my injuries and to mark the end of my relationship with Yi Zaiwen. When I return, I'll forget about him completely and start a new life. Standing under the blue sky of Greece, I once again took out my phone to call Yi Zaiwen. When I realized what I was doing, I felt that I was too useless. I immediately threw my phone into the Aegean Sea. My actions scared the American who was standing beside me and taking pictures with a camera. He came forward to greet me, but I didn't want to respond to him. One reason was that I was in a bad mood, and the other was that my English was very bad. He saw that I wasn't speaking, so he switched to Japanese. When I heard that, I was furious. I turned around and glared at him, saying that you're the Japanese. He was stunned for a moment, and then said in Chinese, so you're Chinese. I ignored him and turned to leave. I just didn't expect that I would be staying in the same hotel as him, and his room was coincidentally next to mine. When I was drinking at the bar that night, I didn't expect to meet him again. This time, he wasn't afraid of my cold eyes and came up to chat with me. He said that we must be fated. Otherwise, how could we meet so many times? I took a sip of wine and laughed coldly in my heart. A foreigner is talking to me about fate. How long has he learned Chinese? Does he even know the meaning of the word fate? In the next few days, I often met him, and I found out his name from time to time. His name was Johnson, and he was a photographer. He took photos all over the world for more than half a year. His Chinese wasn't very good, but he could have simple and normal communication with me. I felt lucky to be able to meet someone who could speak Chinese in a foreign country, so even if he was annoying, I didn't coldly drive him away. Actually, I didn't have any purpose for this trip at all. It was just to relax, so I didn't know where my next destination was after leaving Greece. Without a phone, I haven't contacted manager Zhang for a few days. I don't know what the situation is like in the restaurant now. In fact, after doing something for a long time, there will be feelings. Yuan cuisine has become my career from my initial hobby. It is an indispensable part of my life. I used the hotel's phone to call Manager John to ask about the situation at the restaurant. Manager John reported to me the progress of the work during this period. We talked for a long time. When we were about to hang up the phone, he seemed to have something to say. I'm not a very patient person, and I hate people who say half of their words or stammer without being able to give a reason. So I directly asked him in a cold voice what else he had to say. Seeing that I was angry, Manager John didn't dare to stammer and explain clearly. He directly told me that Yi Zaiwen came to the store to look for me 7 times while I was away. At first, he came once every 2 or 3 days or called to ask if I was going back. Now, he's been waiting in the store every day to see when I would appear. After I heard it, I was stunned. I didn't quite understand why he was looking for me, and why he was so diligent. Doesn't he hate it when I find him annoying? Didn't he even change his number so that I wouldn't be annoyed? Why are you looking for me now? I thought about why he suddenly looked for me the whole night. In the end, I was skeptical that I might have won the bet I made with myself. He might have me in his heart, and he might not only treat me as a brother and sister, but I'm too timid. I can only suspect that I might have won, but I'm not sure if I've won. So, I'm thinking what I should do if I misunderstand it. I was caught in a dilemma as to whether I should go back or not, and I didn't sleep well the entire night. The next day, she went to the living room for breakfast with 2 panda eyes and an unhappy face. She happened to meet Johnson, who was about to return to his room after breakfast. Johnson told me that his shoot in Greece was completed, and he bought a plane ticket today to return to America tomorrow. When I heard that he wanted to go back, my little head suddenly turned and I immediately thought of a wonderful idea. I asked him if he had any work arrangements, and he honestly said he had half a month off. I was overjoyed. Even the heavens were helping me. So, I invited Johnson to come back with me. I used the beautiful scenery of our country to seduce him. This trick was really useful. He was obviously very tempted, as if he wanted to leave with me the next moment. But in the end, he rejected me, and the reason he rejected me was that he didn't have enough funds. China was too big and there were too many places to go. He didn't have enough funds to go to too many places. There was a saying that problems that could be solved with money were not problems. So, I told him that if he wanted to go to China, I could cover all his expenses. He stared at me with his blue eyes and asked me if it was true. I didn't even think about it and agreed to it. When he heard me say that, he immediately agreed and said that as long as I paid for it, he would go to China with me. I'll pay for the expenses, but I have a condition. I want him to be my boyfriend. In the end, I went back to China with Johnson. When I was in the car with him and was about to go to Yuan Cuisine, I saw the latest newspaper in the car. Only then did I know that in the time that I wasn't around, my brother had been made into the front page headlines by that Ling Lan. I couldn't care about anything else, so I pulled Johnson back to the compound. Fortunately, brother and sister-in-law didn't seem to have a bad relationship because of the newspaper incident. I deliberately acted lovey-dovey with Johnson in front of everyone, and I even deliberately brought Johnson next door to chat with Mama Yi, telling her that Johnson was my boyfriend. In addition, I called Manager John to tell him that I had returned, so that if he saw Su Cheng again, he could directly tell him that I was in the compound. I think if Yi Zaiwen is really interested in me, then he'll come to me. If he really only sees me as a sister, then with Johnson around, I won't lose too much face. Fortunately, I won this round because Yi Zaiwen came to the house the next day. The first thing he did when he entered the house was to punch Johnson in the face without saying a word. The force of the punch was so strong that I felt pain on Johnson's face. I've never seen Yi Zaiwen like this. He's usually mean, but he never gets physical. This is the first time I've seen him hit someone, and it's also the first time he's hit someone in front of me. I was stunned for a while before I reacted and pulled them away. I was a little happy, but I also felt sorry for Johnson. He was beaten up for no reason because of me. After confirming that I have a place in Yi Zaiwen's heart, I asked him if he was in pain to avenge Johnson. As expected, Yi Zaiwen was so angry that she stomped her feet. I suddenly had a feeling that my scheme had succeeded. I didn't stay smug for long because Yi Zaiwen seemed to be really angry with me. She grabbed my hand and pulled me away, not even giving me a chance to resist. I drove me to an empty field, and I couldn't see a single person for a few miles. He asked me what happened to Johnson. Before I was angry with him, he made me feel so wronged and said that Johnson was my boyfriend. It was only at that moment that I realized that he was a barbarian because he pulled me over and stuffed my mouth without a word. Being kissed by him gave me a feeling of happiness after suffering. I understood that my persistence and hard work for so many years had not been in vain. However, the more I got to this moment, the more I felt aggrieved for my past. I couldn't help but reach out to pat him. He didn't let go and allowed me to hit him as I pleased. His lips were still kissing me tightly. I was kissed until I couldn't breathe. In the end, I could only lean in his arms and gasp for breath. His hand never let go of me from the beginning. He patted me to calm me down and said in my ear that he loved me. I cried and called him a bastard. I cried and said that I had been wronged for so many years. I cried and said that I didn't want his love anymore. He was overbearing and told me that I couldn't do it. He said that if I provoked him, I had to take responsibility for my entire life. He said that he had grabbed my hand and would never let go for the rest of my life. Only then did I know that he was such an unreasonable person in the news, but I loved him so much. That night, he took me back to his apartment in the city. He held my hand tightly, afraid that I would run away. He told me that he was looking for me when I was missing. I only complained about why I didn't know his feelings for me until now, and why I had to chase after him for so many years. He said he didn't dare to. I didn't understand what he didn't dare to do, but I suddenly remembered that his ex-girlfriend, the school belle, said that he had never really loved her. So I asked him why he wanted to break up with her. He said that he wasn't the one who initiated the breakup, it was the school belle. I asked him if it was because he had someone else in his heart. He looked at me in surprise, but he didn't ask how I knew. He just nodded and looked into my eyes. My heart clenched and I unconsciously clenched my hands tightly as I asked who he was. He didn't say anything and just leaned over to kiss my mouth, then my eyes, nose, neck. I couldn't push him away at all. He was the man I've loved for more than 10 years. I used to dream of becoming his woman, and I couldn't resist his gentleness at all. When our bodies were tightly pressed together, I heard him say in my ear, "It's you." The tearing pain made me unable to react. When the pain passed, I realized that he was saying that I was the person in his heart, that I was the person the school belle was talking about. I couldn't say anything, I just stretched out my hand and tightly returned his favor. When I woke up, it was already the next morning. When I opened my eyes, he was lying beside me, smiling at me. I was in a daze and felt like I was in a dream. Everything felt so unreal. When he saw that I was in a daze, he took the initiative to give me a good morning kiss. His passion brought me back to reality and let me know that everything was not a dream. I was really with him. It was almost noon when we got out of bed. He made me a simple sandwich. It didn't taste good, but I ate it very happily. My heart was full of happiness. In the end, he said that he would send me back later and ask for my hand in marriage with my parents. I suddenly stopped and asked him what he said. He repeated his words and still said that he was going to propose marriage. I asked him why, and he said that he would take responsibility. My face turned sour. I put down the sandwich and turned to leave. To hell with his responsibility. I've always wanted love. To hell with responsibility. Seeing that I was angry and he even asked us what was going on, I cursed him in my heart. Without saying a word, he returned to the courtyard. He was really a blockhead. As soon as he entered the house, he shouted to his mother about the marriage proposal. When he said that we were going to get married, my family was happy to see it happen. I was the only one who was unwilling. The more I thought about it, the more I felt aggrieved for myself. After all, I had followed him for so many years. Why did he say that we were going to get married? It would only make me look like I was being degraded. In the end, he had no choice but to ask me what I had to do in order to agree to marry him. I thought about it and said that I had to let him pursue me once and let me feel the feeling of being pursued. I wanted him to have a taste of what it felt like to be chasing after someone. As a result, our identities changed completely. He became the me of the past, bombarding me with phone calls and text messages every day. He even stopped working properly. In fact, I just want that vanity, because in love, whoever falls in love first will lose first. But since he has done so much for me, I have no regrets, because I know that it was worth it to persist in this relationship. I slowly closed the notebook and placed it at the bottom of the drawer. I wrote down my feelings for Yu Zaiwen in paragraphs. When I'm old, I'll reminisce about the taste of love in the past. At this moment, the door of the room was opened and I saw Yu Zaiwen come in from outside, rubbing her neck. When she saw me sitting in front of the dressing table, she asked, "What are you writing now?" I only shook my head, got up, and walked over to him. I pulled him over to sit on the bed and said, "I have something to tell you." "What?" He looked at me and reached out to push away the bangs on my forehead. I looked into his eyes and seriously said, "Let's get married." Hearing that, I saw that he was stunned and looked at me in a daze. He didn't react for a long time. What did you just say?" His silly look was especially cute. I chuckled and pulled his hand to my stomach. I deliberately muttered, "It won't look good in the wedding dress if her belly gets bigger." He was stunned again. His gaze moved from my face to my stomach. He was stunned for a full minute before he came back to his senses. He grabbed my shoulder excitedly and asked me what I meant. Why would I laugh at him? However, I still kindly leaned over to his ear and told him that I was pregnant. I tested it after dinner. I tried it a few times, but it was positive. It seems that he can only stop his love compensation plan for me, because I don't want to wear a wedding dress with a big belly. It won't look good. He suddenly laughed out loud, picked me up, and spun me around like a child. He said he was going to be a father. His voice was so high that I was afraid that he would be complained by the residents upstairs and downstairs. After the excitement, he said that he was going to call everyone to inform them, but I stopped him because it was really late. I found that disturbing someone's sleep was the most shameless act. In the end, when I was sleeping in a daze, I only heard someone whispering beside me, but because I was too tired, I didn't hear anything. The next day, when I was still lazing around in bed, the doorbell rang. I reached out and pushed the door, hoping that Yeezy would get up to open the door. I didn't expect to reach out for nothing. Feeling drowsy and confused, she walked out of the room and saw Mother Yi and Mother Yi sitting in the living room, talking about something. There were bags of unknown items on the coffee table in front of them. When they saw me coming out of the room, the two of them rushed over to me and asked me how many months it had been, if I had been to the hospital, and if my morning sickness was serious. I was stunned. I wanted to ask them how they found out so quickly, but Mother Yi took the initiative to explain that she received a call from Yu Zaiwen in the middle of the night to say that I was pregnant. Only then did I remember the rustling sound next to me when I woke up in the middle of the night yesterday. It turned out that he was on the phone to tell me the good news. I turned around and saw a smiling face. 254. My precious daughter. Compared to the depression of Su Yicheng's two sons, Juhan was much luckier. Lin Li gave birth to a little daughter for him when she was a day over 39 weeks pregnant. Her big eyes resembled Lin Li's, and her tall nose resembled him more. He was so happy that he didn't go to the company for a few days in a row and spent more time carrying the child than Mother Lin and Mother Ju. However, from this, it could be seen how much he loved his child and the joy of being a father for the first time. Because of her postpartum weakness, Lin Li was ordered by Mother Ju and Mother Lin to lie in bed more often and not move. In addition to breastfeeding, she had to hold the child as little as possible. However, looking at the way Juhan was carrying the child, Lin Li felt that she was so happy that she wanted to cry. No matter how much suffering she had experienced in the past, it was all worth it to have everything that she had today. In the past, she complained that God was unfair to her. She loved a person with all her heart but ended up like that. However, from another perspective, perhaps those pain and tribulations were just tests that God deliberately arranged for her to meet the right person. It was so that she would know how to cherish Juhan when she met him and how to maintain their relationship. Wasn't this also considered lucky? Thinking of this, Lin Li couldn't help but shed tears. However, these tears didn't contain pain or discomfort, but more happiness and happiness. Juhan carried the child. No matter how he looked at it, he found it cute, especially when the little guy closed his eyes and pouted. To him, it was simply too cute. When he turned around and wanted to share this joy and happiness with Lin Li, he happened to see Lin Li crying silently. Although she still had a smile on her face, those tears still stung his eyes a little. She carried the child to the bed and asked nervously, "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" Juhan's nervousness and worry were all written on his face, and Lin Li could see it at a glance. She looked at him and shook her head. No, no. As she laughed, her tears fell uncontrollably. Seeing her cry like this, Juhan's heart ached. He wanted to reach out to hold her, but he was holding the cute and soft baby in his arms. He had no choice but to get up and put the little guy on the child's bed at the side. Then, he returned to Lin Li's side and sat on the bed. He reached out to hold her shoulders and let her lean in his arms as he said softly, Okay, don't cry. You're fine, so why are you crying? Lin Li reached out to wipe the tears on her face as she leaned into his arms and shook her head. She said softly, I just feel that I'm too happy. I didn't even dare to hope that I could still be this happy in the past. How could Juhan not know what she was thinking? The two of them had similar experiences, and how much time did they spend to recover? Actually, not to mention her, sometimes even he would sigh in his heart. It was really lucky to be able to meet her again in this life. Silly girl, Juhan said in a low voice, his hand patting her back gently. He smiled and said softly, If you feel happy, you should smile. Why are you crying? He could not stop talking. He could only use the most practical and stupidest way to comfort her. He gently pushed her away from his arms and wiped the tears off her face. He said softly, All right, stop crying. If the two old ladies see you crying, they'll scold me to death. Lin Li laughed and wrapped her arms around his neck. She looked at Juhan's face, her eyes and nose still red. She said with a nasal voice, Juhan, I'm really happy to have met you in my life. This is the happiest thing in my life. Juhan was also a little moved by her words. He touched her face gently and said in a low voice, What a fool. After saying this, he lowered his head and wanted to kiss her on the lips, but Lin Li reached out and pushed him away. Juhan, who was pushed away by Lin Li, was a little confused. He looked at her and asked, Why did you push me? Lin Li covered her mouth with her hand. She looked at Juhan with her big eyes and said innocently, I haven't brushed my teeth for a few days. It stinks. Her reason made Juhan both angry and amused. He reached out and domineeringly took Lin Li's hand away. I don't despise you, he said. After he finished speaking, he didn't give Lin Li any chance to resist or refute. He directly lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. Although Lin Li was a little embarrassed, after his lips touched hers, she no longer had the strength to push him away. She smiled and accepted her kiss, carefully and gently responding. Just as the two of them were kissing affectionately, the little guy on the child's bed started to cry. Wah wah wah. Juhanman let go of Lin Li. He turned around and got off the bed to pick up the little fellow from the child's bed. He swayed the little fellow gently in his arms and coaxed her gently, Baby, be good. Baby, don't cry. Lin Li looked at him, and happiness was written all over her face. The little guy didn't wake up. Maybe he had a dream, so he cried a little. After Juhan held him in his arms, he recovered and slept soundly. His little mouth moved away as if he was dreaming of something delicious. Juhan carried the little guy to Lin Li, who was on the bed, and said with a surprised look, Look at her, her mouth is moving so much. She must be dreaming about something delicious. Lin Li was also watching. The little guy's sleeping look was as cute as an angel. She reached out and touched the little fellow's face gently. Juhan's and her blood flowed in her body. It was the continuation of her and Juhan's lives and the crystallization of their love. This feeling was really wonderful and magical. Cute, right? Juhan was like presenting a treasure. His originally cold face had a smile on it for the past few days. He was so gentle that it was almost unlike his usual self. If the people in his company knew that he was like this when he was carrying the child, they would probably be shocked, especially Assistant Su. Usually, Juhan really didn't give him any good looks. He would even threaten him from time to make him a supervisor. If Special Assistant Su were here at this moment, his jaw would probably drop. Just as the two of them were holding the child and looking at him, someone knocked on the door from outside. Mother Ling came in with some desserts. When she saw the couple sitting on the bed and holding the child, she smiled with relief and said, Lin Li, it's time for desserts. Hearing that Lin Li should eat some snacks, Juhan quickly got up from the bed with the child in his arms to make room for Mother Lin. Lin Li looked at the desserts her mother brought in and was really a little scared. She said with a bitter face, Mom, can I not eat it? It hasn't been long since lunch. Hearing this, Mother Lin said in disagreement, How can we do that? You just gave birth to a child, and now is the time to nourish your body. You must eat it. There was no room for discussion in his tone. Juhan, who was at the side, also chimed in. Yes, you have to eat the snacks. But I'm really not hungry. I don't feel like eating at all. Lin Li touched her stomach through the blanket and said with a crying face, I don't know when the meat on my stomach will disappear. If you continue to feed me like you're feeding a pig, I'll really become a pig. What nonsense are you spouting? Mother Lin glared at her and placed the small table on the bed. Then, she took the snacks that she had just placed on the bedside table and placed them on top. Finished them all. Don't think about getting fat or not. I don't care how you want to lose weight after you're done with your confinement, but don't think about eating less than a meal with me. Hearing her mother's words, Lin Li looked at Juhan for help. Juhan glanced at her and pretended not to see anything. He carried the child and turned around. Lin Li scolded Juhan for being disloyal in her heart. However, other than that, she could only accept her fate and pick up the chopsticks to eat the bowl of dessert. Seeing Lin Li start to eat, Mother Lin walked over to Juhan. Seeing the little guy in her arms sleeping soundly, she smiled and said to Juhan, Han, let the child lie down when she's asleep. If you keep holding her, she'll only be willing to sleep when you hold her. Juhan didn't mind at all. His eyes were fixed on the child as he smiled and said, It's okay. I like to hold her like this. Mother Ju came in from outside and continued Mother Lin's words, You like to hold the child. When you go to the company in the future, do you want Lin Li to take turns with us to hold the child to sleep? Upon hearing this, Juhan glanced at them and carried the child over to her small bed reluctantly. Seeing this, Mother Lin and Mother Ju looked at each other and couldn't help but smile. Just as everyone in the room was talking and laughing around the child, the housekeeper auntie came in from outside and said with a smile, Madam, Mrs. Su and her daughter-in-law are here. Just as the housekeeper finished speaking, Jiu Anran and Mother Su, who had been following behind her, came in from outside. Anran was still holding a diaper and milk powder in her hands. She smiled and called out, Auntie Ju, Mother Lin. Anran's mother-in-law also smiled and congratulated Mother Ju and Mother Lin. One of you has become a grandmother, and the other has become a grandmother. Congratulations, isn't that so? Mother Ju said happily, I was so happy these 2 days that I couldn't sleep. Where's the child? Let me see who the child looks like. Suyu's mother asked curiously. Anran blinked at Lin Li, who was on the bed, and handed the diaper and milk powder to Juhan. With so many people entering the room at once, Juhan was more worried about whether his baby daughter would be sleeping uneasily. Mother Ju took Mother Su to the crib and whispered, She was in the water just now and is sleeping soundly now. Mother Su looked at the little baby sleeping in the crib and chuckled softly. Look at him, he's so handsome, like Lin Li. Mother Ju said happily, Those big eyes are so pretty. It's true. Mother Su looked envious and whispered, You're so good. You have a grandson and a granddaughter. My 2 boys are having a great time. While they were talking, Jiu Anran sat next to Lin Li and asked, How is it? Is your recovery going well? Lin Li nodded and said with a happy face, They're all pretty good. Seeing her so happy now, Anran was sincerely happy for her.